Hello, welcome back. I hope that you're enjoying stitching the sunflowers. Do post your progress on our private Facebook group Threads community. You can request to join and I will approve it if you've subscribed to this channel. I'd love to see your ideas and I'm sure you've been really creative. It'd be lovely to share with others. Today we're going to do the stems. And I just want to introduce the videos because, as you can see, this picture shows them already completed. Now, I'd originally intended to do the whole lot in whipped heavy chain stitch, so these main stems here and these little stems here, and the video shows the little stems being worked in heavy chain stitch. I subsequently decided that I didn't like it and took it out and just did a little bit of stem stitch on these stems here. But I've left everything in because the stitch tutorials are correct. You might prefer to do heavy chain stitch on all of the stems. So I've just left everything as it is, but please watch the whole video before you decide what to do. And the other thing to say is if you're left-handed, you'll find that it's easier to start on this stem here when you do your main stem than to start here. If you're right-handed, start, as in the video, on this stem here. You don't have to have stitched both sunflowers to do the stems. You can do the smaller one afterwards. We're going to use a whipped heavy chain stitch. There are other stitches that you could use. If you know Mount Mellick work, you could use Mount Mellick stitch, for example, for the stems. You want something that's going to be a little bit thick. Now, we're going to start with the smaller stems here. If you don't know heavy chain stitch, have a practice hoop and practice the stitch before you do it on your work. I'm going to do this little bit and then we're going to go back and I'm going to repeat it on this longer length. The reason that we're doing these smaller bits is that when you do then the main stem, it will look as if it's more on top. So I've started with some little stitches on the top of my leaf here because that's going to get covered later. And then I've come up at the end of this stem. All the stems are going to be worked in the same direction, so from top to bottom. So start by taking a stitch down. And then come up a stitch length away. If you're right-handed, take your needle from right to left through that stitch, not going through the fabric. Left-handers will take the needle from left to right. And take the thread through, take the needle down into the same hole. So you've made a little chain there, and you see just there. Take another stitch, but don't go into that chain. Go back into your first stitch from right to left, weaving under it. So it becomes very thick, and then take the needle down to meet that stitch there. Okay, so you've got a very thick chain now. Come up a stitch distance away. Now don't go into the first bit of that stitch, go into the second bit and take a stitch. Go down into the same hole. Don't go into the first bit, and those are two prongs you can see there. Don't go into that. Ignore that and go into the next bit. And this makes the chain really thick. And then go down into the fabric. I'm going to do one more. And then to finish the stitch, take your needle down and finish off at the back. Now we're going to be whipping this, and you can either whip it as you go or whip it afterwards. I'm going to whip this while I've got the thread. So I'm going to thread my needle through at the back. See if I can do that without turning it over with a bit of difficulty. And come up somewhere just at the bottom of that first stitch. If you don't know whipping is when you're weaving through stitches with your needle without going through the fabric. And you can use the needle that you've got threaded up, because you can use the eye of the needle. The alternative, if you have a tapestry needle which has a blunt end, you could rethread your cotton and do it with that. But I'm just going to use the eye of the needle to demonstrate. And you're going to go through each stitch, wrapping it like that, not pulling it too tight. And then when you get to the bottom, just tuck the last one under through the fabric, like that. And the whipping really is optional. If you like the chain stitch as it is, leave it as it is. So we're going to do the main stem now. Okay, so let's go through that all again. Take a stitch, and then come up a stitch distance away, and take your needle through that stitch. Be careful not to pierce your coral knot stitch. So you're not going through the fabric, you're going from right to left. If you're right-handed, left-handers will simply go from left to right, and then go down into the same hole, or as near as you can get it, to form that chain. Come up a stitch distance away. Don't go through that chain, but go through that first stitch again. To form another chain. Come up a stitch distance away. Miss those two prongs there and go through the thicker part of the stitch and down. You can see those two prongs there that you have to miss, so go into that thicker part above and down. Okay, now that I've completed the main stem, I'm not sure I like these two little bits here. I'm going to just ponder a minute, but I may take them out and put just something thinner like a stem stitch in. So just bear with me while I think about that. And we're then going to, I like the main stem, you can leave it as it is, but I'm going to whip it to see what it looks like, and you can decide what to do with yours. Well, I've had a ponder and I just didn't like that heavy chain on the smaller stem, so I've managed to take it out without ruining my main stem. And I've just done an ordinary stem stitch here, which we did earlier for the leaves, the petals behind here. So just doing the stem stitch on here. And if you like your heavy chain, leave it in, or you might be able to think of an alternative. I think that's better. And now I'm going to whip my main stem. So come up at the top here. I've changed to a tapestry needle because it's easier, but you could use the eye of your needle instead. So you want to go through each individual chain that you can see. If you have a look at it first. So go from right to left if you're right-handed, and you'll go from left to right if you're left-handed. I'm trying not to pull it too tight. And so on. I quite like that. I think that's going to stay. Okay, so I'm going to continue that off camera because I can't see very well with the angle that I'm stitching at, because it's important to get these even through every chain, otherwise it won't look right. And then I'm going to complete the other stem in exactly the same way, and I am going to use the heavy chain stitch for this one. I'm happy with the whipping, you'll be pleased to hear, so I'm going to leave that on the main stems, and I'm happier with these thinner little stems here. Do join me for the next video, which will be outlining the leaves.